Well, welcome back, everyone. How were your workshops? I saw a lot of buzzing and activity, and yeah, please give a round of applause to all those facilitators who have. Can you believe that this is the last session of the 2023 Food Waste Solutions Summit? I know. I wish we could stay here for another couple of days, but I hope you've saved some room for dessert, as we have saved the best for last. Now, before I introduce our last session, I'd be remiss if I didn't share my two thoughts of the day with you all. The first one is, if you need a case study as to why your meeting should be an email, look no further than the Fast and the Furious franchise. I mean, at some point, somebody has got to push back. And two, if you ever think you're too small to make an impact, try sleeping with a mosquito or battling a Gen Zer on Twitter. Both will obliterate you. Which is why we're here today. From Little Miss Flint to Greta Thunberg and present company here today, present company included, impossible is a term that youth today have chosen to embrace in order to herald a new era of environmental stewardism. Taking urgent and deliberate action to shape a better future today, not tomorrow, and they deserve a seat at the table. The power of youth can no longer be ignored. Yet, too often, youth are underrepresented or excluded from decisions that impact their future. Their enthusiasm and passion for this work will give us a spark of energy to head back home and rethink our efforts to drive change in our own communities. Our current food systems are their inheritance, and they will no longer be bystanders to processes and decisions that determine their future. So I implore you to take a seat and learn from several youth paddling the oars of innovation today. And with that, please join me in welcoming the one and only Marvin Hayes to the stage to kick things off with a spoken word piece.
Good afternoon. How's everybody? Excellent. As Vanessa stated, they have saved the best for last. I would like to give you greetings from the Wakanda of South Baltimore, where we build bridges instead of barriers. I'm going to be very brief today because this is all about our youth, our indomitable youth, the youth of the future that's going to move this food waste movement to the next level. So let's get started. Coming from the Wakanda of South Baltimore, there's an old stating that states that the young trees will make up the forest. What this means that youth will determine our future. This food waste solution movement and nation will not flourish unless our youth provide leadership, leverage through innovation to bring together the masses and create better policies and policies that promote inclusiveness, diversity, and youth development. I promised myself many moons ago as a youth leader when my opportunity came to remove barriers that did not allow me to blossom as a youth leader in creating my own entity with the Baltimore Compost Collective, I refused to not have founder syndrome or old leadership syndrome. Founder syndrome is when founders struggle to refuse or change gears and adopt a new mindset. Rather than making a way for new youth leaders to take an organization to the next level, founder tries to hang on to power. Sherry, the new queen of Wakanda forever and the first female Black Panther, states, "Brilliance at a young age is always not accepted by the elders." Last year at the Food Waste Summit 2022, I stated that it's imperative for our youth to have active role in food waste solution movement. This year, I challenge every person in this room that has more time than them and than in front of them, which simply means that you're getting old. As you go home today, motivated by the youth before you here today, that you create opportunities for youth to participate and develop as youth leaders. Make a commitment to bring a youth with you to REFED's Food Waste Solution 2024. It takes a village. I'm holding you to that. Because of REFED's commitment to youth development and youth leadership, today on the main stage, we had some youth that are doing the impossible work in the food waste movement. I was inspired by the work of the youth on this panel and wrote a poem, spoken word, simply titled, How to Support Today's Indomitable Youth. We teach our youth to shut up and listen, raise their hands and ask for permission, instead of encouraging the youth, if they see a problem, to make a decision and take a position. As adults, we must take time to listen. Today's indomitable youth are impossible to subdue or defeat, but seldom brought to the table to make it complete. We make decisions that impact their future, but seldom save them a seat. Words without action is just chitter-chatter. Today's youth took a stand to teach us that regardless to our race or gender, that all humans matter. Impossible is a term that the youth before you today have chosen to embrace to make solutions from the food that people waste. Youth are the leaders in this food waste movement and must be a part if we want to see any improvements. Facilitate, do not delegate. These are ways that adult leaders can motivate and participate. We must share roles and responsibility in order to unwrap our youth talents and abilities. Yearn to connect, not correct, and always motivate with respect. Let me repeat that one again. Yearn to connect, not correct, and always motivate with respect. Foster collaborations and watch our youth exceed above all expectations. Show youth appreciation in tangible ways, but most importantly, don't be stuck in your ways. This should be the adult preamble. Always lead by example. Enlighten and empower and give all the youth the tools they need to succeed, and our success as a human race is guaranteed. Lead on, my youth, lead on if your ear is within my range. Continue to use imagination and innovation to promote social change. Thank you. Without further ado, I'd like to bring up today's food waste solution and indomitable youth. Let's give it up. Excellent. Let's get it started. Let's get it started. We will have a question and answer period for about 10 minutes after the panel, so please hold your questions. You have been asking me, Marvin, how do we support today's youth? And how you do that is to ask the youth, not ask Marvin. Right, so let's get started. Our panelists will introduce themselves and talk about their why. What is their passion, and most importantly, how the older generation can support and empower the youth without dictating how they should go about it. So I first would like to pass it to Ben to get us started.
Thank you so much. Wow. And thank you, REFED, for having us here. Well, I'll start by saying REFED was FarmLink's first grant. We started in April 2020. Great month. Actually, it was a very tough month for a lot of people. But we started in April 2020. We had almost no idea what we were doing. My co-founder, Aiden, applied for a REFED grant on his phone. Someone yelled at us for applying for a grant on our phones, and then REFED gave us the grant. And so thank you, REFED. I am a co-founder and CEO at the FarmLink Project. We are a hunger-fighting charity that started in April 2020 when we read countless stories about the commercial food industry shutting down and at the same time food bank lines being as long as they'd ever been. And we set out with a goal of just connecting one farm with one food bank. It has grown into a movement that's included over 600 students that have been a part of building us to get us where we are today, thousands of farmers and food banks, and tens of thousands of supporters otherwise. And we'll talk a lot more about FarmLink, I'm sure, but I think the thing that we've always felt is that in times of crisis, young people have an incredible power to come together and truly make a difference. And we've always felt that a seat at the table, an opportunity to ask questions and to learn was all we needed to have a foot in the door. And so I'll leave it there, but thank you for having us here.
Excellent, excellent. I think I may know this next young man, but as the Queen of Wakanda stated, and Wakanda forever, show them who you are. Tell them who you are, Mr. Kenneth Moss.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth Moss, and I'm the head youth composter for the Baltimore Compost Collective. The Baltimore Compost Collective is a youth-led food scrap collection service located at the Filbert Street Garden in the South Baltimore community, Brooklyn, Curtis Bay neighborhood. That serves about 11 different communities with about 300 residents that we pick up from, and much more to come. We pick up residents' 5-gallon bucket filled with scraps. I mean, filled. We turn their food scraps into black gold soil enhancer for nearby residents that don't have access to green space. The Filbert Street Garden has been a part of my life for many years. I grew my first tomato there when I was just 6 years old. It has brought various opportunities to my life. Before I was a youth composter, I was a Be More Beautiful block captain picking up trash and litter around nearby neighborhoods. Through Be More Beautiful, I got introduced to the Baltimore Compost Collective, where he hired me at just 15 years old, and the job requirement was 16 years old. From working at the Baltimore Compost Collective, I toured the Baltimore City Council member, Councilman Zeke Cohen, where he gave me a paid internship at City Hall. I've gotten a chance to be on the Dr. K radio show. I've gotten a chance to travel to St. Croix, Virgin Island with a group called New Generation Scholars, learning about the African diaspora through dance, drumming, photography, literature, and videography. I've gotten a chance to create my own business, Kenny Captures, just a kid with a camera, now transforming into a young man with a camera. This work is important to me because I live in one of the toxic neighborhoods in the country. Bresco is one of the main incinerators where it creates $55 million in health damages each year. But one thing about the wind, it doesn't segregate or discriminate, so we all breathing in bad air. But if you don't remember anything I said today, I want y'all to repeat this with me. Compost. Learn so you don't have to burn. Starve the incinerator. Feed the soil. Feed the community. Thank you. Love from the Baltimore Compost.
I apologize. He got up. He caught the fever. He has the fever. Let's hear from Arjun.
Hey everyone, thank you again for having us here. It's been a really great opportunity to learn about the variety and just the breadth of engagement that someone like me who's still in college can engage with, and it's really exciting. So I'm Arjun. I am the external president of the Food Recovery Network chapter at Washington University here in St. Louis. So we're part of a larger food recovery network, which is about 190 different campuses across the nation. And what we do is we find areas of food waste, primarily on our campuses with our different dining services, recover that food, and then deliver it to different organizations that we identify that are in need of food in the St. Louis area. And so I think what really got us started was just a collection of students who had a variety of experience in food volunteerism. Some people even just liked food. I remember that first meeting we just met in the pavilion of one of our school buildings right after COVID had finally sort of went down, and we had spent the first 2 years kind of just in our rooms, not really talking to each other and just online the whole time. And it started out as a collection of just students who really wanted to have a direct impact, and I think now we're sort of growing and getting our legs under ourselves in this past year. And I think, what we're doing here today and sort of getting the youth involved is really impactful, and I think speaks to what we now see ourselves as an opportunity for students on college campuses to learn about the problems in food insecurity, because it's such just a unknown problem, I think, for a lot of people who just never experienced it. And so we're really grateful to be here and work with all of you to help spread awareness and engagement across all our efforts.
Next, we will hear from Mia. Mia is not a youth, but she has had challenges and done some amazing youth work when she was a youth. So let's hear from Mia.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Mia. I am one of the co-founders of Food Recovery Network, and I'm currently at Compass Group as the senior project manager for their sustainability team. I did want to talk about my why. So I was born in Ukraine, and we moved to the US when I was about 3. Went back often, and I just saw what my grandparents were doing in their home. They had their own little garden. They grew their own vegetables that they pickled to get through the winter. All food scraps went to their chickens, and my grandfather loved to lick the plate clean, any sauces, any crumbs. So it was literally no crumb was going to waste. And that system that they had in their small home, in their small garden, was my model for sustainability that I've had in the back of my mind this entire time. Fast forwarding to when I got to college, I was engaged with volunteering. I went to University of Maryland, so we saw the need in Washington, D.C. when we volunteered with food banks, in Baltimore, and even in College Park, Maryland. I was learning about climate change and the urgency and how big and complicated the issue is. And so when a few friends and I got together and started to talk about donations and how to get fresh food to the community, we started to pull at the thread of where food waste might be coming from. And what we realized is that there was a ton of opportunity and a ton of overproduction happening right on campus at University of Maryland. And that led to the founding of Food Recovery Network in 2011. And since then, Food Recovery Network has grown to nearly 200 campuses and has donated over 10 million meals to those in need. Yeah. And now, like I said, I'm working for Compass Group and able to continue my work with food recovery and also heavily focus on waste reduction and waste tracking.
Mayor, can you speak a little bit about recommendations? How can the older generation support today's indomitable youth?
So when starting Food Recovery Network, we had so much support, and there were several co-founders, several students involved, but also at University of Maryland, we got connected to professors and funders and people that were just willing to believe in us and support us. Our board of directors was a group of individuals that we got connected to through the university. And I remember that, they had full-time jobs, they had families, and they would spend their weekends with us talking through our vision, doing strategic strategy sessions, all of these things that helped grow Food Recovery Network, and we couldn't have done it without that belief and support in our vision. And I think something that's important to note too with students, and especially now post-pandemic, is that it needs to be a holistic approach. I had a conversation with our director of sustainability for University of Maryland Dining Services, and she was helping me grow Food Recovery Network at University of Maryland. And the conversation was not about food waste or what we needed to do logistically, but what I as an individual needed to do to set boundaries with my time and focus so that I wasn't overburdened and burnt out in doing this work and being a student.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Ben, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. You started FarmLink without any experience in that space. How were you able to do that?
We did have no experience in this space. It was April 2020, as I said, and myself, along with every other college student I knew, was sent home, and like so many others who were not in our position, stripped of a sense of community and belonging, and honestly, for many of us, a purpose. And there were countless stories that it just felt hard to ignore. You'd see one juxtaposed with the other. And so to start as small as we did, it wasn't we're going to build an app and we're going to figure out everything. It was we're going to talk to as many people as we can who can teach us, and we're going to go from there. And that learning mindset has been something that has defined how we've existed to this day. We never expected that we'd know more than the farmers who've been doing this for generations, the transportation companies that have built an entire sector around this, or the food banks that have been here for far longer than we were. And so we felt that the best thing we could do is come in and be learners. And even to this day, I've immersed myself in this space for the last 3 years, and I'll still walk into a produce conference and feel like the most junior person in the room. But I don't necessarily feel that that's a disadvantage if we're really comfortable with what we do know, but even more comfortable with what we don't. And to be a learner, to ask questions, to approach it as if we have something to learn from who we're sitting across from, it gives us so much more space to not know everything. And being here with ReFed for the last 2 days, I think collectively we may be very close. I'm confident that none of us knows everything about the problems we're trying to solve. And so for us as young people who didn't have a lot of experience, I actually think it served as an advantage. There are a lot of things in agriculture and logistics in the charitable food space that have been the same way for so long that we almost just assume that that's how they should be. And for us to at least come in and ask why, it may be that there's no way that it should change, but to come in and ask why for everything, it gave us the space to learn, and it also gave us the space to look with fresh eyes on things that maybe hadn't been looked at in a while.
Excellent, excellent. Let's listen to our youth. Listen to our youth. Listen to our youth. Arjun, what are unique challenges you see that specifically with depending on students to further the food recovery network efforts?
Yeah, I think something Mia touched on in terms of just student burden is something we always try to keep in mind. And the name of the game for us is sustainability, right? Because every 4 years, there's a completely new student group on campus. Every 2 years, essentially, your exec board is switching out for a completely new team. And so we really have to instill a framework that regardless of who's in that position, they can still execute, the goals of what we're trying to do. And so I'd say the biggest challenge is having just sustained engagement among our general population of students and getting them to commit regularly time towards our efforts. And so, some ways we've tried to deal with that is, making them feel like they're a part of a community. And it's not just, you're volunteering at this faceless organization. We see these people on campus all the time. I'll go up and talk to a volunteer and say, hey, what's up? I saw you here at this volunteer. How was your day? How's everything going? And I think that makes what they're doing so much more impactful, and that also crosses over to our events. I think Food Recovery Network as a backbone, we do just go and grab food and deliver it to other locations, but we've added, cooking events, we've added opportunities for students to, bake a pie, you give one to the community, you keep one yourself, right? Different ways for them to get more involved and feel like they have a tangible impact on what they're doing, and they're not just sort of a vehicle between these two locations. So I think sort of just tying them in the community and within our own chapter is a really good way to help recruit volunteers and help keep our efforts sustainable long term.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Mia, the majority of the food waste recovery efforts rely on unpaid volunteer work. How can the system at large ensure that greater equity for food rescuers?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to have a two-part answer. So first, with my experience as a student co-founding Food Recovery Network, none of the co-founders of the national organization graduated on time. And at the time, it didn't really feel like there was an option. Like, we wanted to prioritize growing this organization, and that meant taking less classes, maybe missing a class here or there. But that meant an extra year that you're paying for classes and paying for college, and an extra year that you weren't earning an income out of college. So I think there's a really big opportunity there to provide space to students on campuses, and something I'd like to see more of at the university level. And then with Compass Group, I'm grateful to be able to work on some of our food recovery programming, and it's really wonderful to see all the different models that exist, and we do get to work with some of those paid models, and I look forward to continuing those conversations and continuing our partnerships and collaborations.
All right, excellent, excellent. Mr. Moss, what environmental injustices exist in Baltimore, and what keeps you motivated to continue to spread compost fever among your peers?
So in my city, there is 2 incinerators in my neighborhood. There's a Bresco incinerator that creates $55 million in health damages every year, and a medical waste incinerator that John Hopkins burn their medical waste. And there's a coal plant that sits right across the recreation center where kids play at. And there's also a kerosene company that drives Expressway 95 that drives big old trucks full of gasoline, toxic chemicals all throughout Curtis Bay and Brooklyn. So, and this is important to me because I live there. When I leave here tomorrow, that's where I'm going, to smell that bad air. So this is why I'm on this fight, to educate more people about why this has to happen in my community.
How can adults support you, Kenny, without dictating you what you should do?
Adults can support by just taking the time to just listen and not being so stubborn-minded.
Tell them again, not that you're speaking of me, but
just being able to try to understand and just taking the time to listen to a young person and just having a space to be able to want to learn more and not think because you're older than somebody you know everything.
you heard that? Did we hear that loud and clear? Excellent, excellent, excellent. If there was one thing that you hope that people in the audience today would have as a result of the conversation about empowering more youth in the food sector, what would it be, Arjun?
I would say it's that we are here, and all we're here to do is just learn from you guys. I think, as Ben said, we are not experts in any of these fields. We're learning ourselves, and we welcome all of you to just participate and educate us on ways in which we can grow and ways in which we can empower ourselves. And so, if you can take one thing away, I would say it's just reach out. Like, that is honestly the biggest thing that we face when we're trying to grow, especially outside of campus, is that if someone shows interest, we are going to commit as much time, as much effort as we can to form that relationship, because we really value the fact that people who have full-time jobs and have all these other responsibilities are taking the time for us. So I would say just reach out, and you'd be surprised in just sort of the amount of feedback and the amount of interest you'll get from the youth.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Mia?
Yeah, and I'm going to echo that a little bit. I really love what Dana said yesterday about radical collaboration, and I think that means, yes, we're going to leave the summit with new partnerships, starting new commitments, and maybe have new plans with different organizations. But I also think it is really important to focus on the individuals you can support and the youth you can support. So I'm going to challenge you to think about someone that you met at the conference that might be at a different stage in their career that you could potentially mentor or support. And we really do have to lift each other up in this fight.
Excellent. Mr. Moss?
Could you repeat the question for me?
Definitely, I can do that. I can do that. If there's only one thing that you hope people in the audience today will take back to their homes as a result of the conversation about empowering youth in the food sector, what would it be?
I want y'all to really not be stubborn-minded. Because when I leave here, because I heard a story about how the coal plant really affects people's lungs. Like, one person, they told me that when they had a cough, they actually coughed up coal. That's from breathing in. And so I want y'all to really know that this is not no joke. So when I really leave here tomorrow, really think about Brooklyn and Curtis Bay and the Baltimore Compost Collective.
Excellent. Learn so you don't have to burn. Ben, let's bring us home. Bring us home, Ben.
Sure. We haven't said this as much recently, but for a long time at FarmLink, we talked about the idea that to be young was to believe that change was possible. And I've experienced a lot of pushback to FarmLink as a whole, even from people who don't necessarily disagree with the idea that change needs to happen. But generally, what I have experienced is that you cannot achieve disruption without discomfort. And I think that there are a lot of people that want to see change, and not everybody's prepared for the discomfort that maybe comes with it. And so for FarmLink, what we are trying to do is not that crazy, but it's different. And there are a lot of people that's enough, that it's uncomfortable, and that's enough that they shut it down. And that happens less and less. It happens less than it did at the start. But I think that it's really important that for all of us to think about, doesn't matter about young or old, although I'll tell you, college students that have never seen anything else are not that afraid of that discomfort. And that made that really easy at the start for FarmLink. But the reality is, it doesn't matter if we can get 500 college students on board. We need to work with and collaborate with agriculture as a whole, with supply chain and logistics as a whole, with the charitable food space. And there are gems in every single pocket of each of those spaces that, regardless of age, are prepared for that, believe in that change. But we need everybody to get on board. And I think it starts with respecting the fact that to achieve that disruption, there's going to be discomfort along the way, because there's no other way to achieve change.
Let's give it up. Let's give it up. I think we have time for one more question, so somebody can volunteer and somebody can piggyback and jump on. But we'd like to know from your perspective, why is engagement of youth and youth-led initiatives right now to address the transition towards a more sustainable, inclusive, and healthy food system?
I can start. Because that's the next generation that's going to lead all of this. We've had, again, over 600 students come through FarmLink, and that's in just the first 3 years. And we've said since day one, we believe the impact of those 600 students will be multiples greater than the impact of our direct organization and our program. And so we have an incredible team that's a mix of full-time expert hires that have joined us from other parts of it, other industries, and people who started as students that are now working full-time alongside me. But there's a commitment that we're working to make to involve young people deeply in the work that we do and in the community partners that we're centering ourselves around. And I think that for us to remind ourselves that it's not just that FarmLink came from students, it's that if we lose ties with what got us here to begin with, I don't know what will distinguish us from every other organization that we're working to partner with, we're working to improve, and we're working to support. And so for FarmLink, it's not just about getting more food to food banks, it's about working with an entire generation and everybody who is able to be a part of what we're doing to feel that change is possible and that it starts with those young people and they're going to carry it on as they go through their careers.
Mia, Arjun, or Kenny?
I say you will want somebody to pass on your legacy. I've been hearing about bringing a youth. So if you don't have a youth to bring, once it's time to go to the other side, who is going to pass on your legacy? Well, I want to say it's a lot about competition and all this. We fighting against each other through this compost fight, but we all fighting together. So where's the competition? And if it's about kids and trying to be a family, how can we fight against each other?
Are you listening? Collaboration before competition. Listen to our youth. Listen to our youth. Arjun, or Mia?
Sure. I mean, I think what worked with Food Recovery Network is that as students, we had a different perspective on the world. And we weren't the first ones to do food recovery, but it did kind of catch on pretty quickly because students wanted to engage with their communities and make an impact. And I think we really need to tap into that resource to really make a difference.
Yeah, and I would build on that. You know, we have people on our campus who do so many different things and are interested in so many different careers. Just because they're not, you know, planning on entering a specific service that's food volunteer related doesn't mean they can't have an impact, right? And so I think more and more Food Recovery Network in our chapter is not just a place to recover food, but to be a site to catalyze awareness and interest just among the general youth who are on our college campuses. And so I think just in a general notion, as we are the younger generation coming up, just, you know, working to make food recovery discussion more normal and more just common on campus is just going to result in just a really wide impact. As we all leave college and go to our different sectors, you'll see it come up in places you would never think before.
Excellent. We talked a little bit earlier about building bridges and not barriers. Can someone speak about what barriers that you personally faced that have hindered your ability to further your impact in this area? We have an honest conversation about that. Let's talk about the barriers.
I think for me, when I was starting out, it was really hard not to have that imposter syndrome that youth have and so many of us struggle with. And yeah, that's why that mentorship and guidance and individual support is so important. I've been really lucky to have people believe in me, and even working, first consulting with Compass Group and now working there, I feel like I have that support to explore the food recovery and food waste world, and that's, yeah, incredibly important.
Mr. Moss?
I would say the barrier when I first started was I was scared to speak. So my first time was speaking. We had went down to City Hall, and I said, Mr. Hayes, there's so many people down here. And he said, don't worry about it, you're gonna be fine. And I rocked it, but.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So I would say if you just encourage more youth and expose them to more things, they would want to do more.
Excellent. Ben Argent?
I mean, I second on that a lot. I think when you're starting out as a student on any initiative, it can be daunting on just where to start. You know, I think in this room, I would never imagine that I would be talking with people who are recovering billions of pounds of food and who are running multinational organizations. And so I think the fact that you guys are giving an opportunity for us to connect with you guys is really important. And so when we were first starting out, a big barrier that we had was sometimes, you know, we would reach out and we wouldn't really get a response. And it's not just that it didn't work out, but it can be pretty demoralizing to feel like you're not really connected outside of your individual group. And so I think that's why I really push for just reaching out, because even if nothing happens and you don't end up collaborating, at least you now know that there's support there for the youth and for people who are in your lane and trying to do what you want to do.
All right, Mayor, you want to wrap it up for us?
I think I can wrap it up.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah.
All right.
In the first month we started FarmLink, I spoke with a cucumber grower that had 30 truckloads of cucumbers with nowhere to go, and local food banks had a plan for 5 of them. And a different participant in the hunger fighting space reached out to us and said, don't talk to this donor, this is our donor. We said, we can help. We know we can send 10 loads, we'll coordinate, we'll take care of the transportation, we'll help this farmer out. And they called the farmer with us on the phone and said, these kids are scamming you, and hung up. And that was somebody who has the same mission as us, who advocates in the same space, and who wants to see people fed. And that is not a reflection of how we should look at the hunger fighting space. By and large, there is an incredible amount of effort for collaboration. But that's the kind of barrier that we've faced, and it comes back to what I was talking about. It's that inertia, it's that hesitancy to see change. And honestly, we had a lot of growing to do too. It's not that we were running a perfect show 1 month in, but since then, there have been thousands of instances by dozens of people in this room where they've been given the opportunity to be a bystander and let people wonder about a project like FarmLink, or to speak up and say, I actually know what they're doing and I know how they can help you. Or at the very least, you should talk to them and ask for yourself. And that is single-handedly the only reason we were here today. We got to screen our film 2 days ago. I'll thank everybody here. There's a FarmLink shout out in every single session I was in yesterday. And all of that is because people in this room took time to hear who we were, they listened, they gave us a chance to prove ourselves, and then they were willing to advocate for us, even if it meant disagreeing with people who hadn't taken a chance to really learn about what we were trying to do. And so I think that barrier, fortunately, is a lower hurdle today than it was 3 years ago, but I don't think some kids should have to rescue 100 million pounds of food to do that. And
Preach,
so
preach, preach.
I'm incredibly appreciative to be here today. We have so many incredible partners in the hunger fighting space, and we literally would be nothing without them. We are just a connector of those different participants, but that is a story that I felt was reflective of the kind of barriers that we did face.
Thank you, thank you. Audience, let's give it up for today's Indomitable youth. Time to spark action. Let's give it up. All right, now we're going to open up. I think we may have time for 2 very informative questions from our young people. This is the time. Don't ask Marvin how you can support youth. Ask the youth how you can support youth. Take the time to listen. Yes.
Great session. Thank you for sharing everything that you shared. My name is Nikki Zoli. I work with Lidl US. It's a German-based grocer. We have about 13,000 grocery stores around the world, most of them in Europe. So we're just small here in the US, 176. But I have always felt a strong tie to youth and the work that I've done over the years and corporate social responsibility, and see you all as the change makers. And what I've tried to do is look at this from the angle of doing programs for kids, by kids. You guys can really help to inform those future solutions. How do you see retailers, including the grocery industry, from your perspective, because you're asking all the whys, so you're thinking of a new way, addressing this, especially maybe even a discount grocer like us?
Anybody would like to tackle that? Arjun?
Can you?
Well,
I was going to ask to repeat the question. Sorry.
Could you repeat your question for us?
how do you think the grocery industry and/or retailers can play a unique role? I'm coming from the discount grocer space in addressing food waste, either through education or I don't want to say too much because I want you to ask the whys and just tell me your thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, I think for us personally, when we look at grocers, it's very daunting because we are a pretty small chapter. You know, we have like 30, 40 students. Only 2 of us have cars. And so, you know, when we look at like Walmart and they're like, we can give you a pallet of chicken, I'm like, we're not making 400 stops back and forth to recover this food, you know? So I think if there's some sort of way that would allow us to, you know, work with grocers on a smaller scale, and I think that would be a really good way for us to be able to connect with these larger organizations, because even if we aren't able to, you know, have that big of an impact in terms of numbers, I think, you know, we are accomplishing the same goal. And just to touch on your education aspects, I think that's some way in which we are trying to expand on campus. And I think that there are a lot of different organizations that work to educate middle school children, K through 5, on healthy eating practices and where to find good food. And so I think that if you're looking to make that part of your mission, I would simply just go to a campus, honestly. You know, bring free food. By the way, free food is like, it's like blood in the water for sharks. People have a sixth sense on campus for where free food is, and they will swarm you, I promise. So just, I would go and just, you know, talk about what you're doing, and you will find, you know, just on the top of my head, I can give you 3 organizations on my campus that aim towards educating young children on healthy eating practices. And so I think really just going to where we are, because we at times struggle to reach out to big grocer chains and finding ways to really contact them. And so going to those students and those clubs, I think, will give you a lot of different resources and ways to create something to educate children on healthy eating and whatever else you'd like to enrich the children on.
Ben?
I'll add about education that I think apart from storytelling in what we consume, community touch points like grocers are some of the best places where we can create a shift in social perspective and constantly allow people to learn about food waste and the intersection between food waste and hunger, and for grocers that are in a position to do so, how that involves with the environment. And I think that my local grocery store, they take all of the aging produce, they put it in the front, they sell it at a discount, and it's better for them. And Dana asked yesterday, why is that not a standard practice? I think the other part of it is there's probably a lot that grocers can learn from the people that work there. I have
Drop jewels, Ben, drop jewels.
more food insecure people work at Walmart than any other company in the world. And that is not a reflection of any individual participants' choices at a place like that, but many of them are below college age. And I believe that having dialogues with the people that are a part of that and then using the platform that you have as just a regular community touch point to increase people's awareness about these problems, it's a huge way that we can make progress.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. All right. Have a young lady in the back.
I guess I'm not a part of youth anymore, too. I may look young, but. My question is about young ageism. Have you ever faced with young ageism when you meet with people of power, people who can give you funds, people who can value your opinions and ideas? How do you deal with that? How do you overcome that if you ever experienced that?
Well, my experience was just exposing, just try new things. Everybody is imperfect, so I mean, if they don't like what you're doing, you just go to the next person, and maybe they got something for you, and you just go to the next.
Anybody else?
Do you want to go?
Oh, sure. Just real quick. I think with starting Food Recovery Network as a student, it took some time to find confidence, and we started speaking with funders and big organizations. So for me, it was really about learning what my strengths were and not comparing myself as a leader to even other leaders within Food Recovery Network or in this space, and finding those mentors that were willing to work with me to get to where I needed to be.
We worked with one of my teammates, her name was Lindsay. She took a gap year after COVID started, before starting freshman year at Stanford, and she is not a centimeter above 5 feet tall. So she's a 17-year-old incoming freshman in college, and she ran our placement team for a year and facilitated the placement of 35 million pounds of food to hunger-fighting charities around the country. And more people than I can count learned who Lindsay was after she stopped working for FarmLink and said, I was talking to a 17-year-old that whole time. And I don't know if they would have treated her differently, but I think that the fact that we were remote in our bedrooms, mostly talking through email and phone calls, it didn't matter. And there's not a single role that anyone had at FarmLink for that first year and a half until we had to learn how to go through an audit that anybody couldn't have figured out in the first 3 weeks that they were part of what we were doing. And so I think that gave us an opportunity to really reflect on the fact that there's some really capable people that haven't even started college yet and maybe just don't have that kind of opportunity to be a part of it. And so whatever chances organizations, teams, individual people have to create that space, I think a lot of people would be surprised.
All right. Excellent. Can we give another round of applause for today's Indomitable youth? Sparking action. I would like to thank REFAD for giving us this opportunity. I would love to thank NRDC for giving me the opportunity to join the REFAD Food Waste Solution family so I can advocate on behalf of our youth. So without further ado, I would like to give the mic back to Vanessa.
And Marvin, thank you for that beautiful poem.
Let's give them another round of applause, everyone. Aim to connect, not correct. Always motivate with respect. Marvin Hayes. We want to thank Marvin and all our youth speakers here today, Kenny, Mia, Arjun, and Ben. But we also want to thank all our speakers and facilitators over the last 3 days for such a phenomenal show of expertise, knowledge, and insights. Please give them a round of applause. And thank you to all our amazing sponsors at all levels for making every aspect of this event possible. We are always so grateful for your support, both financial and in kind, and we hope you join us next year. Thanks as well to all who exhibited their innovations and for inspiring us all with the great work you're doing. But also thank you to the team here at Hyatt for making us all feel at home this week. Now, I and the rest of the ReFed team would not be here if it were not for our event support team, Meet Green. We so appreciate all the work that you have done. Thanks for sticking with us in the trenches.
Seriously. And thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us here in St. Louis. And of course, thanks to all of you who joined us virtually. We are glad you stuck with us and stayed engaged. And I gotta say, Dana was right when she said in her opening remarks, this is one of our favorite times of the year here at ReFed. You know, we're a remote team. This is a lot of work, but this is one of the only times we get to see each other and see all of you as well. Our friends, our partners, you know, both are new and old, and it's been so great going on this journey with all of you. It's been really wonderful. So give yourselves a round of applause for all the hard work. I hope all of you are walking away with lots of emails and names for people to stay in touch with and work with moving forward. And definitely go ahead and start blocking off the month of May next year, because very soon we will be announcing the 2024 Food Waste Solutions Summit specific location and dates coming to you later this summer. So get ready. But in the meantime, thank you again for everything, and we will see you next year.
And can I please get a big shout out to my co-MC, Angel Veza.
And Vanessa, come on.
And we would not be here today if it were not for Lisa Cardi and Jackie Sudgett. And finally, but definitely not least, thank you to the entire ReFed team. And thank you for Dana Gunders for being our woman-in-chief, our fearless leader, and for always motivating us further each and every day.